Rise Up and Run. Stories of deliverance and transformation through the power of Jesus Christ that allows people to rise up from bondage and run in freedom. I'm your host, Janice. And thank you so much for joining us today. I have a very special guest at my side. My husband of 33 years, almost 34 next month, Bob. Hello, husband.
What? Hello. I feel like you're lab rat on some of your stuff, like ice bath. Now podcast.
No, not everybody knows what we're talking about, but I have. What did I tell the girls the other day? I said when I turned 60 in October, I've been living like somebody left the gate open and just trying all sorts of new stuff. And my sweet husband, he'll say, when I bring up a weird idea, he'll say, "Are you serious?" And then he'll do whatever he can to help me see that in fruition. Did I say that right? Fruition?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. So this has been quite a thing. Trying to get this podcast set up this morning. We've been trying to record this for about 2 weeks, and it just never worked out with the timing. And I think you have to be in the right mood, so to speak, to talk about things like this. And then this morning, the microphone broke, and the cords were twisted, and what else happened? Oh, the clock was ticking too loud, so I had to pull off a giant clock off the wall. And
We started with 2 microphones, and now we're sitting inches from each other.
We haven't sat this close in a long time, but it's kind of fun.
Wow.
Anyway, so we have a story to share. God has, it's amazing we're still together after all these years because we've been through a lot of things. And what we're going to talk about today is probably the hardest year of our marriage, or for sure the second hardest year. And it was, it wasn't even a year. It was several years that Bob struggled with alcoholism. And I almost didn't want to do an episode on that because I don't want anyone to ever think that my husband is weak or a loser, or I don't want anyone to walk away from this podcast with the idea of why did you stay with him? He's an awful person, because he's absolutely not. My husband has served our communities for 35 years in law enforcement and protected people and hauled people down out of burning buildings in the rain. And I'm just really proud of him. So he is, he's incredible, and our story is incredible. And I thank him for being this vulnerable and letting me share it. It's hard. It's hard stuff to share, and it's hard stuff to talk about. But even though we've been through it now, there's so many people who have reached out to us because they're going through the same thing, or people are getting saved and getting freedom from alcoholism. It's just remarkable what God will do with your story. So I suppose I should give him a minute to talk here. But do you want to tell people how we met? That's kind of a fun story people like to hear.
Sure. Let's see. We met in 1989, and I was a jailer at the time, and you were doing pretrial release, which meant you came up at 5 in the morning to chat with people that got arrested overnight to see if they could be released without bond on pretrial. And I opened up the cell door, and I asked who her first client was, and she said,
"I'm here to see Mr. Wright."
And I said, "I'm right here." That's the truth.
That is so corny, though. So we met in jail in 1989.
Yeah, and started dating that fall. September 8th, 1989 was our first date. I only remember it because it's 9/8/89. I mean, if it was
not because it was a special date or fun or lovely.
Well, it was the start of an adventure.
It was.
That. And we've been together ever since that day.
Well, and then we got engaged 3 months later.
Yeah.
And then we got married 4 months later.
So 7 months from our first date.
Oh, good grief. I would not recommend. 2 thumbs down. Do not recommend. 1 star.
As Sebastian would say, our grandson, I don't like your strategy.
So, yeah, April, it'll be 34 years. Oh my gosh. It just seems Yeah.
Yeah.
So when would you say let's talk about alcohol. So when would you say that, how long would you say that we struggled with your drinking?
Struggled with, probably really struggled with for a few years.
Like 4 or 5? I think we figured it out, didn't
Probably
we?
that, yeah.
Yeah.
But, it started out where, I drank when I was younger.
Yeah. Tell us about what was your family history
So,
like with drinking?
Well, the household I grew up in, it was, I'm from southern Iowa, so it's a little more redneck than Norwegian Decorah. So my wife had a culture shock. Alcohol was prevalent, mostly beer, not hard liquor, but I remember just even at a young age that I couldn't just drink a little bit. I had to drink in excess just to get blackout drunk, basically. And I didn't know why. I just thought that was what kids did. And that continued until we met.
Mm-hmm. And my background was, I'm one of 6. I've never seen either of my parents drunk that I know of. And my parents were more like, let's not forbid it, because then we'll make it so taboo that people are going to want to, or we kids will want to drink all the time. We'll hide it. And I remember one of the many, many nights I was drinking in high school, I brought home like maybe 4 beers out of a 6-pack or something. And I hid it in the weeds in our backyard. And wouldn't you know, my dad, who has never mowed a lawn, I don't think in our history, was mowing the lawn back there that next morning. And I was like, man. And all he said was, why didn't you bring that beer in and put it in the fridge? And I was like, okay, I will next time. So drinking wasn't, I don't know if their strategy worked out, because a couple of my siblings struggled with alcohol, and yeah, I'm not sure how effective that was, but you know what? They tried, and so drinking wasn't a huge deal, but there wasn't a ton of it going on around me when I was younger.
And then for me, once we got married, I became a believer. Janice witnessed to me, and I gave my life to the Lord. But it became a thing where I was more judgmental. As far as, oh, you drank, that was judgy. So I quit drinking because I didn't want my kids to be around what I grew up in.
Because you have a history in your family, your dad and your grandpa, would you say?
Yep.
Yeah. And so we both decided to stop drinking. I would say for religious reasons, because we felt like that wasn't what God wanted us to do. And we both honestly overdid it. So we stopped drinking for 23 years. It was a long time, 20 some years. And again, yeah, we were very judgy and critical and,
Like the church lady.
Like the church lady in Saturday Night
Sinner.
Live. Sinner. Isn't that special?
So it was, when did we were at Hickory Hills we stayed there for an anniversary time.
That is so not right.
No?
Good try.
I can remember our anniversary. Does that count?
Yes, it does. You're good.
What was going on?
When we started drinking, we started talking about it. It was our 23rd anniversary, and we were out for dinner, and I looked over and saw this couple having a glass of wine, and I said, man, I wish that I could have a glass of wine sometime. I think I'd enjoy that. And they were like, well, go ahead. But, it was like, gosh, I've gone 20-some years without it. Do I want to jump back in? And you'd said something like, well, that was when we were in our 20s. We're heading towards 50 now. We should be able to manage alcohol in our lives. And so we put some definite parameters on it as far as how often we were going to drink. We weren't going to have any beer. We were going to only drink if we went out for dinner. And slowly but surely, those parameters were removed maybe. And it wasn't long before we were right back on in there.
Yeah. So what I discovered over the progression of that time It was that my alcoholism was just sitting dormant. I was just a dry drunk for 20 years, 20 plus years, and it just sat dormant. And then once I had that first drink, it was like I'd never stopped, and then it just took off. And it progressively, got worse and worse, and then it's, becomes every day. And
Well, let's back up because you made it sound like that happened really fast. When did
There's a
you
progression.
feel like, ooh, we get to drink again? When did you feel like, yay? Do you remember?
it didn't take long. I mean, I kept so much from you. It just secretive. I mean, I was probably drinking, several times a week within a month or two.
Really?
Yeah. And then it just, it's just one of those things that I was ashamed of because I know that I hadn't done it for so long, but I couldn't understand what my obsession was to get drunk.
You have a personality, though, that, and he has a really addictive personality.
Oh my gosh. Are you going to talk about the Jolly
I'm
Ranchers?
going to talk about the Jolly Ranchers. When we first met, it was apple flavored green apple Jolly Ranchers. He
Sour
would
apple.
eat those all the time, all the time. And then it moved to sunflower seeds.
Oh,
Yeah. Ugh. So we always had like a cup with spittoon of
Well, there was
sunflower
always
seeds.
I was chewing tobacco too.
Okay, well, we'll get there just a minute. And then sunflower seeds, and he would just have bags and bags of them and be spitting shells out, and it was, and then chewing tobacco was a thing for you. What other things? Alcohol, anyway, jumped right on in there, and I don't know what happened, but this went on for years, where it got to the point where everything that he did had to revolve around alcohol. Like I knew if he was outside working for a while, I knew he was drinking. And he would say, I'm mowing the lawn. I got to have a beer when you mow the lawn. Or I'm barbecuing. You got to have a beer when you're barbecuing. Everything, every occasion, every circumstance called for alcohol. For
if
you.
If I was happy, I celebrated with alcohol. If I was sad, if I was bored, but I think that just becomes the excuse to drink. You find a reason to drink to explain why are you drinking today, and I think alcoholics, especially, we find the worst time to drink. Celebrations where it's be like, I'm not going to drink today because we have some big event going on, but then I ruined it by just getting drunk and being a fool.
I remember that time we were at a wedding reception, I think it was, and you agreed that you weren't going to drink, but you would go up and get me drinks. So I don't have a problem with alcohol, but he's okay with me drinking. That doesn't bother him, right? Can you
Correct.
confirm or deny?
I can confirm that.
Okay. And so he would go up and get me drinks, and then pretty soon I was like, I caught him drinking. And we got in the car to go home, and he was driving, and I could tell that he was drunk, and he was just sneaking them when he would go up and get me drinks. He would buy a lot of, it got to the point where I was counting the beer, because he would always say, oh, I just had one, or I just had two, and he kept the beer out in the garage, in the fridge, in the fridge in the garage, and so I'd go in and I'd count them. I'd make a little notepad, and okay, and then so I could say, you didn't have two, you had 7. Are you counting my beers? And it was, I was just trying to get evidence against him almost, just to plead my case. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I was offended. Like, how dare you
Yeah.
question me and count that? How dare you? I mean, I can't enjoy a beer. So then it became, I just wanted to get drunk. That's my obsession, was to get drunk. Why have one beer? So I'd have a beer, and then I'd drink a bunch of whiskey or vodka or something to get drunk, and be like, I only had one beer. You don't know about the other ones. So why are you acting so strange? You only had one beer. Like,
You had definitely some telltale signs when you were drunk. Like you would just start chatting and just talking incessantly and just acted so unusually happy. So, yeah.
so, but the crux of it is that I was so selfish. I didn't think that I was impacting my wife or kids. I think Emmy was the only one home at the time.
Yeah, Emmy's our
So,
youngest daughter.
I was-
And, oh, go ahead.
I always say, I kept it a pretty good secret because my life was unmanageable, but I managed to, on my work days, I would just start drinking as soon as I got off work.
Yeah.
And then I would stop by, say 9 o'clock. I was drunk by 9 o'clock. I'd pass out. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning, go to work. I definitely wasn't productive. I was always tired and hungover. I drank every day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there wasn't a day that I would wake up and say, I'm not going to drink today. I'd just stare in that mirror and say, don't drink today. And I'd feel better by the afternoon and be like, oh, got to drink. And once you have one, then it's on. Then on my days off, it was really bad. Just drink all day long. Not all day. I had standards.
What were those standards?
Oh,
Do tell.
You have to wait till after lunch at least.
Okay. Seems fair.
And then I retired.
Okay, let's jump in. So, yeah, it was bad. Bless his heart. This guy works so hard. And I know for sure that he didn't ever go to work drunk.
No, I did
Ever. I know that he was hungover, and he would always complain about how tired he was every morning. He just couldn't figure out why. And, little did I know that he was drunk, or not drunk, but hungover. And I caught him a lot of times, but I know a lot of times I didn't. And he got into the habit of buying vodka, like a little, are they pints that you would
They're
get?
pints.
Pints of vodka, because allegedly you can't smell vodka. Allegedly.
Well, you can.
I can't. I have a nose. So, poor guy. I was a probation officer for 100 years, and I heard from him every darn excuse and everything from him that I had heard from my clients. And it was so weird because I spent 30-some years sitting across the table, the desk from addiction, and now I was living with it. I was sleeping next to it. It was just like, what an experience to go through, to understand, like, firsthand, close up, what this looks like in somebody's life. It wasn't good, but yeah. So he thought that vodka would be good because it doesn't smell. So how many pints of vodka would you say that you drank, and how often?
Oh, every day. Probably I'd stop at Casey's because they had the little pints. They were $4 with tax. They were $4 even, so I didn't have to have a bunch of change and stuff.
And they were right by the checkout, kind of, weren't they, or not?
Close to it.
Okay.
I think I would probably stop there minimum 2, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. I mean, there was a point where I started drinking right after breakfast, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. Kind of, pace myself, spread it out throughout the day. But I wanted that constant feeling of being intoxicated, and it was miserable living like that. I was so tired, and
Did you feel like I contributed to that?
not at all.
Like, is there anything that I could have done differently to make sure that I tried to catch him and I didn't set him up, but I tried to, like, be able to confront him with things. I bought an Alka-Sensor, and he would even be like, that Alka-Sensor isn't right. An Alka-Sensor is that thing that you blow
PBT.
into. Okay, well, you're a cop. People don't know what PBT means.
Preliminary breath test.
Nobody knows that.
A few people.
But anyway, it's that thing where you blow into it, and then it gives you the reading of how much alcohol is in your blood. Or in your blood? In something.
Yeah,
In
your
you.
blood.
So he'd pull the same thing my clients would. That thing is broken. That thing isn't working. And it was just unreal. Like, are you crazy?
I just gargled with some
Oh my
Sco.
gosh, yes.
But the big, I mean, alcoholics, I'm speak for myself,
Yeah.
are trying to justify their drinking problem or what they feel is not a drinking problem. He was like, I don't have a problem. You have a problem. But, if you were married to my wife, you'd drink too. If you had...
You didn't think
Well-
that, did you?
I heard that somewhere.
Somebody said it once a long time ago.
If you had my problems, you drink too. If you had my job, if you had this, you had that. There was never any accountability of self-responsibility of the problem that you have. It's a progressive disease that it always gets worse. It never gets better. Mm-hmm. And I was progressing rapidly, circling the drain, as cop talk or EMS talk. They're circling the drain, which means they're about ready to, get flushed. I'm about done. About done. It just got worse and worse. And the lies, the deception, there was no peace in this house.
Well, what do you think contributed to all the drinking? Because law enforcement is high in alcoholism. Very, very stressful. You'd gone through like a command chain where the leadership was not great in our community at that time. We had bought a couple houses to flip. And so you'd work 8 hours at the PD, and then you'd go and work 8 hours flipping these houses. And you said that's when it really got bad, right?
Yes. But there are a lot of people that do that don't become alcoholics or don't have an obsession of alcohol. For me, my body, what I've learned, they call it the allergy, is like I can't process alcohol. It just becomes an all-consuming thing. Where a lot of people just can have one drink. They'll have a stressful day. Normal drinkers can do that. Again, I'm not saying that. I'm definitely not a normal drinker. Once I have one, and I've learned that many people, once you have one, you can't stop at one. It's like, why just have one? I want to get drunk. My body just craved it. So the solution, as I've learned, is I can't have one. I can never have one again. And I mean, we can talk about that too, but the pinnacle of my alcoholism came on Christmas Eve.
Oh, wait, I'm not ready for that yet.
Oh, you're not?
No, we're going back, buddy.
Oh, man.
Tell me about that
kinda
dream.
just,
Tell people about that dream that you had.
Oh, so I had a dream, very vivid, where I was like, if you think of a dark, dank hotel, the carpet's filthy, the walls are the brown panel, the lights are kind of flickering. It's just gross, just gross. And I'm walking down this hallway, and I get to the end of it, because I feel like that's the life I was living in. I was alive, but it just wasn't a place where I know I should be. And I got to the end of that hallway, and there were two doors. And I feel like God was telling me to choose. I had to choose. I was at a point in my life I had to choose which door I was going to go through. And one door I know was going to lead to ultimately my death. And the other door, all I could see was like a sliver of brilliant light underneath the door, coming out onto the floor. And I just felt drawn to that door. And in my dream, I opened that door, and it was just like perfect white light, and it just pulled me in, and then to shut the door, it was just like all you could see was light. That's the only thing in there was just bright white light. It was warm, and it was peaceful, and it was a peace that I've just never really felt. Just like, especially I've said before, when I was drinking heavy and hung over all the time, I never dreamt because I never got good sleep. Very restless sleep, hot, cold, sick feeling, just never slept well. And I remember once I finally got sober, was like, I had a dream, you know, I
Yeah.
dreamt you know, it was peaceful.
So after you had that dream, it was following one of our major fights about drinking, and I remember when you told me about it, you came out like you just seen the Lord or something, just a revelation, just a brightness, just like, I got to tell you about this dream. And then poof, our marriage, I don't know what happened. God did something that day because all of a sudden I forgave you. And I mean, this was like in a matter of a few hours. And so that was, I think, in October of 2020, maybe. And then we did it was for me just like instantaneously, I forgave you, and our marriage was back together. And so we did a video for our church that they shared. And let's see, how can I say this? I think it was surprising. People love Bob. You know, people much prefer Bob over me all the time because he's just.
They do?
Yes, because he's nice. And I'm extra sometimes, right? Do you think I am?
Yes.
So people just love Bob. So I think for our church, which was really conservative and, anyway, I think that they were surprised because they never would have believed our story that Bob was drunk every night. And he had never once ever has he been abusive toward me. I've never feared physical harm ever. That just isn't who he is. But I do remember one time he would stand over me and just be like, "This is your fault. You're the reason that I drink." And if you know anything, don't try to have a conversation or reason with a drunk fella because it's not going to be a good thing. So I would just sit there and take it. And I was so afraid. So Bob's dad committed suicide. And I was so afraid. I knew he wasn't happy. You know, I knew he didn't like living like this and what he was doing to our family and our marriage. And I was afraid he was going to kill himself. So I didn't want to, you know, confront him all the time because a person can only take so much. And then what would he do? Go out and drink and get drunk and take his gun with him and kill himself like his dad did? You know, it was just like, I was so scared of that. So that part of me kept me from really wanting to go deep and, what do I want to say? Like accuse you, but to confront you any more than I did. I was really scared. And sometimes he'd drive off and I remember calling your best friend and your best friend would go out and look for you. And it was just chaos. And we still did have one child at home. And she's very close to both of us. And I tried so hard to protect her from what was going on because I didn't want her last year at home to be, Dad was always drunk, or Mom and Dad were always fighting because Dad was drunk all the time. And so I really tried as best as I could to keep it from her. And I also didn't have a lot of people that I could share with. I mean, we didn't really tell anybody, but I remember I kept telling Bob, I have to bring this into the light. I have to let other people know because I can't do this by myself anymore. So after we made that video in October of 2020, did we decide that's when it was?
Yeah.
You were sober until February.
Yep.
And then I was like, I smelled it. And I was like, are you drinking again? And you probably said,
Nope.
No, you didn't. You probably said, don't worry about it.
I don't remember.
And so what made you decide to drink?
I thought I had it under control. I thought I could have one drink and then I can't. So I was sober for what?
5 months?
Maybe not quite 5.
4 months, maybe. Yeah.
And then I retired.
Oh, wait, I have a segue for that. So So then it started back up again.
Yep.
And it didn't start like slowly, right?
No, I jumped right back in with both feet.
Did you like kick yourself? Did you feel like, what on earth have I done?
Well, I felt I was going to retire in a few months after that. So I thought, well, once I'm retired, this is all going to be fine. I can just drink all day long. I would have no responsibilities.
And I thought, what are we going to do when he retires?
You were worried.
Well, because I thought
And
this way,
rightfully so.
you at least I know you won't drink till 3:30. But when you retire, I knew what was waiting for us. And you listeners are going to have to wait. We're going to continue our story in episode 3, which we'll release next week. And as if what we were dealing with wasn't difficult enough, God had something else waiting for us, another struggle. And we'll share that all with you next week. Thanks for listening today.